Normally, this is when I'd welcome you to Jobbed Out, the wrestling editorial that reminds you that only in wrestling can you write poontang on a pie and not get censored. But this isn't a standard Jobbed Out wrestling editorial. Today, like Goldberg, we're refusing to follow the script. I introduce to you Who Booked These Guys? An audio-only casual podcast-style conversation where a guest and I can talk about anything wrestling, be it a career, a match stipulation, the state of the business itself. I keep saying that I want you to be a part of this conversation too, and I mean it. So today I had a chat with Michael Vecchio, radio host of Ciao, Italia, film critic and lifelong wrestling fan, about the most electrifying topic in all of entertainment, the celebration of The Rock's 50th birthday. He and I broke down exactly what made Dwayne Johnson a once-in-a-generation crossover star, and I hope you enjoy. It's going to be a very, very bad impersonation of somebody completely unrelated here. But in order to properly convey what's going on here, I must reference a current member of the AEW roster.
Right.
See if I can do this.
All right, yes. Today we celebrate the birthday of Rock the Dwayne Johnstone. Very good, very evil.
Hey, that's very good, Danhausen, eh? That's not bad.
This man, he's the king of scorpions. He's the fairy of teeth. Danhausen, also a big fan of teeth. Use them in matches. You cannot get disqualified as teeth come into the body and are not a foreign object.
That's very good, Jim. That's pretty good, actually.
But yes, goodness, May 2nd, 2022, the 50th birthday of Rock the Dwayne Johnstone, the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, Flex Cavana. Never forget. Never forget Flex Cavana. Of course, we're talking about the owner of the XFL, The Rock, who, whether you loved him or hated him, had a gigantic impact on the pro wrestling industry. And, my goodness. You and I both grew up watching the Attitude Era. Even when it comes down to, which Raw theme songs we preferred, which era we preferred. You're a Thorn in Your Eye guy. I'm a Union Underground guy, but both of us got to enjoy The Rock at his peak.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost incredible that we're thinking of The Rock as a 50-year-old. This is a guy who at one time was the youngest ever WWF champion. I think he was 26, and now he's 50, and that's 24 years later.
I was going to say, was he the youngest? Well, I guess before
not
Brock.
anymore.
Before Brock, because there was Brock, and then there was Orton.
Yeah. Well, he won in '98 for the first time. I'm pretty sure. So he would have been 25, 26.
Which in Vince McMahon times is midlife crisis, because he doesn't seem to value anybody over the age of 30.
Yeah, certainly. Well, and then the not the irony, but The Rock basically retired from being an active full-time wrestler at the age of 30.
I remember how messy that was as well, when his contract lapsed, and there was a huge stink over him not re-signing. He wanted more money, they wanted more dates, and he was at one point erased for about 6 months. But he was erased at one point.
And then of course, when he does come back, the Hollywood Rock, I think of all the Rock's personas, when he's alternated between being a heel and a face, the Hollywood Rock, I would say, and it was a short-lived period, but I would say that was probably my favorite version of the Great One, without a doubt.
I think what gave value to that was how, and this is something, he throughout his career either should be credited or condemned for this, he always gave to his opponents. But at Hollywood Rock, he did everything he could to get other people over. Even right down to Hurricane Helms, who would never have gotten a main event push if not for Rocky Maivia.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, the famous match on one of the Raws before WrestleMania 19, right in the build-up to Rock versus Austin 3, and even the backstage segments, with Hurricane, and he answers his cell phone, and then it's nothing that's calling. He wants to talk to you. You're nothing.
Goodness, I loved that segment.
It's just gold. Yeah, you're right. Putting people over. I guess one of the things that I think surprises a lot of people is the difference between Dwayne Johnson as a person and The Rock persona versus so totally different. And, I guess we could say that about a lot of performers, that they're not like their characters, but it's so obvious, it's so amazingly different with Dwayne Johnson, because, having not met him or knowing him personally, but you can tell that he's a genuine, humble, giving guy.
Yeah, third generation. He's got both sides of his family had wrestling ties. But, I mean, we were taught and told from an early age that, the best pro wrestlers, the best entertainers just turn their personalities up to 11. And he did the opposite.
Yeah.
He did the complete opposite. And it paid off, because, man, oh man, did you love to hate him.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just such a unique athletic ability. He's a good-looking guy, obviously. And I know the term sports entertainment can kind of, be looked down upon nowadays.
Well, the thing is, because the whole term sports entertainment was to hide the other word that was a dirty word, and that's wrestling.
Yeah, unfortunately. Very much so. But I think Dwayne Johnson, more so than others, maybe you could, put Undertaker in that category, but more so than others, was just an all-around entertainer. Mm-hmm. Not only was he is a great wrestler, he's a great athlete, but he's a great comic. He's a great talker. Nobody delivers a promo quite like The Rock. He is an entertainer. He really is a complete package type, and yeah.
That's what got him to elevate beyond the pro wrestling scene. He was in movies, he was in television, he hosted Saturday Night Live, which was a big deal in 2000.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I watched Saturday Night Live every week. It was on Channel 8, midnight, Saturdays. But when The Rock hosted it, he brought The Big Show, he brought Triple H, who had also hosted Mad TV. But it was a big deal, just like it was a big deal when Cena was on Playboy, because these wrestlers were from an industry where you accepted the acting was bad, their careers were typecast, and that they weren't going to be on the mainstream, and Rock said, screw that.
Yeah, and I think that's another part of what makes him, let's say exceptional. No, there have been, Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper.
Everybody on Jobbed Out knows my opinion of Hulk Hogan. Merchandise coming soon.
Well, we won't get into that. But Hogan and Roddy Piper and others, they have tried to, become actors. They starred in several films, and yet they never really made it. And The Rock is, as far as I know, the only really successful big Hollywood actor to come from wrestling. And the question that has been asked of me from people who aren't really fans of wrestling, or they just casually watch it, well, how is that possible? What does he have that other ex-wrestlers didn't?
Well, I was just going to correct you there. I wouldn't say he's the only, because some people have succeeded and crossed over. He's the first. He's the Jenna Jameson of pro wrestling. But
certainly you see like John Cena and Batista, exactly. But even them, I
in the TV world, Edge did very well for himself as well. Adam Copeland did rather well.
Sure, but not on the same level, though. I would say, and certainly, I don't think you can make the direct comparison to Dwayne Johnson and what he's achieved.
That's true. I think, and this might seem like a slap in the face, and as a movie buff, you have every right to shoot me down on this. What both helped and hindered The Rock was he went the how do I put this? The second half De Niro approach. He took every possible script he could. And granted, that gave us some absolute garbage, like The Tooth Fairy, Walking Tall, Long Shot, Doom.
Well, but even the Scorpion King, or that was just goofy.
Well, Scorpion King, at least. Here's the thing: it was such a big deal when he was signed on for The Mummy Returns, because this was going to be the big one. This was going to be a wrestler in a top blockbuster movie, and he roared, and that was it.
Yeah, it was, and if I remember correctly, it was very poor CGI.
Yes, it was the equivalent of putting Fat Joe in Empire, and I don't know if you remember the 2000, I think it was 2005 Empire movie, the drug dealer movie, but Fat Joe the rapper, this was going to be such a big deal. They threw him in the trailer, and all he did in the trailer was say the main character's name, and that scene got cut from the movie, so he didn't even do that.
Oh my God.
Like The Rock.
The
Rock, I mean, he signed on for everything to get his name out there. And you know what? I didn't hate Walking Tall. I didn't hate The Rundown. I didn't hate Get Smart, Get Smart was the
Right,
the
I forgot about that. Yeah, he did a lot in the early 2000s, eh?
But if you're at the roulette table and you put a chip down on everything, something's going to be a winner, and he ended up landing on the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Yeah. And then Jumanji, and
even the other guys did well. And with that, you know, the snowball effect had happened, and now he wasn't the Tooth Fairy, which, let's face it, was Mr. Nanny. That should have killed his career dead. And for a long time, I thought his acting career was dead. But he managed to, you know, turn that around. And the big thing about The Rock is his work ethic. And that was with his wrestling, with his music, with the TV shows and movie appearances, with that god-awful Rock Clock app, which you can find the review on my channel.
Yeah, I saw that video. I remember that.
But the thing was, even though, you know, they weren't all hits, you know, he came up with some winners. San Andreas was big for him. Wasn't he on Ballers? Like, the TV show, like, that, there was some... Yeah, he was. He was a main character in Ballers, which helped, you know, elevate his career, and we ended up getting Young Rock.
Yeah, which actually, I think that's it's a nice show. It's a charming little show.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, it's a success despite the genre of show that it's supposed to be. Because Young Rock was to follow in the footsteps of Young Sheldon, which was okay, which followed in the footsteps of Everybody Hates Chris, which wasn't very good. But, you know, again, because this guy had the charisma and the mainstream appeal that the other two just did not necessarily have. They had a character, whereas he could relate or appeal to people. And while he had some stinkers, he did manage to have some big successes in that people wanted to see him.
I guess the next question is, you know, we've talked about what he's done. What will he do in the future? I've often been asked if he's, you know, sort of typecast himself, because he does the action films and he plays the tough guy. Sometimes it's a comedy, but he's still, you know, the tough guy. Now he's 50.
Yeah.
You know, how much, and of course he's in great shape. But going forward, can he really be doing these types of roles forever? Does he have it within him to maybe do a serious film that doesn't rely on his muscle mass? I'm going to say he does. I think he's a good actor. I think he's a good performer.
I mean, no offense, but when I say this, I don't think that's even a question at this point. 7 or 8 years ago, I agree with you. He was all about fast cars, big muscles, action films. But then there was Jumanji. Then there was Moana. Now he's got, you know, he managed to, again, I keep throwing this back in his face, he has redeemed himself for the Tooth Fairy, and now he can, you know, do these projects that are aimed towards families and children. He's in a DC movie coming up, isn't he?
Is he? I'm not sure.
I know.
True,
he's going to take part in a remake that I'm really interested in. He's going to be in the remake of Big Trouble in Little China. But this is a perfect film for The Rock. You know, I think that's one that it appeals, especially, you know, I'm starting to get annoyed by the phrase, the core audience. But the people who were fans of The Rock the Wrestler are going to enjoy that style of movie. Because it was a thriller. Back in the 80s. You know, it had a cult following, and I think he can do well with it. But then again, it could always turn into dread.
Yeah, what was another one? Oh, yeah, I remember one of the really bad ones he was in. It was based on a video game. I think it's called Doom.
Oh, I forgot about Doom.
Yeah, and usually video game movies,
they normally tank.
They don't do well.
Yeah,
they tank. But, yeah, that was one of them. But, yeah, I think he is... I think he's a good performer. He's always been a good performer.
And that's, he doesn't do this idea that, you know, made Hulk Hogan fail, where you're going to hand this guy a script and he's just going to be himself in it. The Rock says, no, yeah, you want a different character, I'll give you a different character. He's versatile.
Yeah, yes, that's the key word. Another thing I wanted to talk about in terms of what makes The Rock unique is that I think, unlike a lot of wrestlers, and this is neither a bad thing or a good thing, but a lot of wrestlers are career men. They are wrestlers for life. And it's not that they don't have other interests, but their main passion is wrestling. Mm-hmm. And many times, and I think obviously, Ric Flair and Undertaker are probably, the guys who are most guilty of this, they stay on way too long.
Oh, goodness. The Undertaker, as far as I'm concerned, committed a cardinal sin because he admitted it in 2002, I believe, when he was
in an interview with...
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
With
yes.
Mike, was it Mike Lamberg? Who's the...
Michael Landsberg.
Landsberg, yeah, with Off the Record.
With Michael Landsberg,
yes. And, he said, it's like, I don't want to be one of those guys who's around 10 years too long. Well, guess what, Taker? I have been in attendance for 2 WrestleManias. Guess which 2?
Both of the ones he lost at. What a distinction.
Yep. And both of those ones, he should have retired 1 year prior. Yeah. He would have been perfectly fine to leave it 1 year earlier, each time.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially after the WrestleMania 33, he symbolically retired. And then, according to that Last Ride documentary, he hated the match so much that he needed to have one last go. He couldn't retire like that. He felt so guilty to roll.
If I remember correctly, he needed one last go. That was after the Saudi Arabia tag match. That was the one where he's like, I cannot end it with Taker and Kane against Triple H and Shawn Michaels. The only person who was fit to work was Michaels. Everyone else I believe everyone got hurt. They were all
Triple H
awful.
Injured himself again
in the first minute. Yeah, he tore a pec.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess we're going astray here.
But yes, The Rock, he knew when to pull the plug.
So what I guess the point I wanted to make is I don't think many people they don't realize his acting career has been twice as long as his wrestling career. The man did not wrestle for very long.
No.
6 years, 7 years, like
7 if you count, him working in Lawler's USWA. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, so he accomplished so much in less than 10 years. By the age of, let's say, he debuted in 96, right? So he was about 24. And he retired, let's say, 03, 31, 30. And he'd look at all the things, and he became such a huge star in 7 years. That's incredible, and I just don't think people realize that.
He was bigger than the industry. That's the pull that he had. Everybody recognized the eyebrow. Everybody recognized the Brahma Bull. And it's a catching lightning in the bottle scenario. Very few entities could have that sort of mainstream appeal, and as it stands in the business right now, no one has it. But in the late 90s, you recognize the Brahma Bull, you recognize the Austin 316 t-shirt, and you recognize the NWO logo.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the merchandise alone it brings in millions of dollars, and I've always been impressed by the meteoric rise in such a short time. And furthermore, that, he could have continued and he could have gone on, but he stopped at 30. Yes, he's come back. He's had matches. He even won the WWE Championship again in 2013.
I wasn't happy with that. I felt like they should have kept it on Punk until Mania, but...
Yeah, that's a different story. I agree with you. But being said, he only really had a 7-year career. So I've always been really, really impressed by that and what he was able to accomplish. And also, I guess, luckily, as far as I know, he really averted major injury.
Until Twice in a Lifetime. Yeah, until that Twice in a Lifetime scenario with John Cena where it was a quad, a pec, and a bicep in the first 10 minutes, wasn't it?
After 10 years. Like, in his initial run...
The most I remember him dealing with wasn't even an injury. That was when he had the pec surgery, the cosmetic pec surgery. And for the most part, he just wore a t-shirt and, didn't do much more than a couple bumps. This was during the Ken Shamrock feud.
Okay.
So during that point of time, when all of a sudden he's wearing a t-shirt all the time, that was because he didn't want people to see that he, was covering up that he had implants, essentially.
Yes, and of course, all the matches with Mick Foley, he's wearing the tracksuit, right? The shirt and pants.
Fun fact, his very first film credit out there, it's not The Mummy Returns, it's Beyond the Mat, where he played chair-swinging psychopath number 1.
One of my favorite matches from that period with Mick Foley is the empty arena match.
Oh, Halftime Heat.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant.
Mwah.
So comical.
It takes some serious skill, and we can especially say this after what we've been through in 2020 and early 2021. It takes some serious skill to have everybody at the edge of their seats in an empty building.
Yeah, there you go. You said it, Jim. Absolutely. And you talk about trash talkers. No, there is nobody trash talk like The Rock.
When you can get on commentary on your own match to heel to the announcers, it's hilarious. It draws. It makes you invested. That, as someone who always cheered for the people that went up against The Rock. I was a Ken Shamrock fan. When he took over the Nation of Domination, I was rooting for Ron Simmons. Big on Triple H and X-Pac when, DX and the Nation were feuding.
Right.
I even, at this point, didn't hate Mick Foley yet. I do have some pretty outstanding opinions of Mick Foley for another time. But The Rock, if you either absolutely idolized him or you rooted to see him get his ass kicked.
Yeah.
But he never, ever had a period of time in the wrestling world where you're just like, okay, cool, what's the next segment? No one was indifferent to The Rock, ever.
Hey, that's a great point. Absolutely. He stole the show.
Absolutely.
He was the most electrifying man, and he lived up to that. Absolutely.
And when he did, make an appearance on, that 70s show, you would, whether you liked the show or not, you were going to tune in to see if he could carry that through. In the example I just gave, not so much. But he tried. And it still popped a rating because people wanted to see how it worked.
I remember, I'm guessing in the United States as well, but certainly here in Canada, they used to have tie-ins in 7-Eleven and the collectible Slurpee cups. Mm-hmm. And I never really was a fan of The Rock, as a character, but I still bought The Rock Slurpee cup.
Yeah, I believe it.
It was something that, it was just something, you wanted it to be part of your collection. Yeah.
To this date, my memory is fuzzy. His biography was either the first or second wrestler biography I read. I believe I got The Rock Says and Have a Nice Day at the same time, but I do not remember which one I read first. I can tell you I preferred Mick Foley's book, because there's a whole chapter about The Rock lying to lose his virginity to a woman 10 years older than him in it, and I thought, okay, this book kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But his focus was to be as weird as it is to say as a WWE fan, as universal as possible. And whether it was a TV appearance or a book or a phone app or thank goodness he didn't overshoot his music career, because the only song that I believe he ever actually performed was that one with Slick Rick that somehow no one remembers. Pie.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
Because that's the one where you expect, you know what, they're going to cancel him. This is going to be a cancel culture thing, because that song was rancid.
And of course, we can never forget The Rock in concert, remember?
Yes. I'm half convinced he only learned guitar just to be a heel in 2003. That was the only reason he learned to play guitar, was so he could have a new way to give mean promos out.
And of course, Jerry Lawler's laughter also enhanced that segment. So let's give props to that. But yeah, you're right. The Rock commanded attention, whether you were booing or cheering him. He was just a a main figure of the WWF, early WWE, and there's no denying the star power. And speaking of, you look at programs like Hulk Hogan versus The Rock at Mania 18. There was only a few guys that could have, headlined a WrestleMania like that. Initially, of course, we know it was supposed to be Austin versus Hogan. And then because Austin wasn't comfortable working that, it went to The Rock.
I believe the issue. I don't know if it was Austin as much as it was a clash between Austin and Hogan, as neither of them were really willing to lose to the other.
From what I understood, that Austin felt he wasn't there mentally to work with Hogan.
And realistically, he was right. He was right. 2002, he was in a bad headspace in 2002, talking about Austin's legal troubles in 2002.
Well, and there's the infamous walkout, right?
Oh, the walkout! My goodness, yep.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and really the reason Rock and Hogan worked was because Rock took over, saw that the crowd was not going to play by the script, and they completely, redid the whole match live. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is going to be, and I know you're not a fan of this series, that match will be mentioned in a future video, as Hogan did try to play a bit of a political game out of that match and actually tried to pull something off to hurt The Rock's career. But at that point in time, nothing was going to hurt The Rock's career.
You mean when he tried to kill him in an ambulance?
No, I'm talking about Hogan pulling what he did to The Undertaker. He tried to do the same to The Rock in
Oh, yes, Survivor Series 91. I know that story.
Yeah. So, he tried to claim that The Rock had injured him, even though it was well documented that he was injured prior to that.
Right, and of course you see him holding his ribs, when he,
I believe he tried blaming Rikishi after people called him out on the Rock thing, and I believe there was even a thing where he was hurt before the Rikishi match. But some people, they really want to hold their spot, and not to make this about Hogan, The Rock was someone who, if you could overtake him and take his spot, he would have shook your hand and said you deserved it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best way to explain how giving The Rock was, because all intents and purposes, with how much he gave to everybody else, he sold. He sold for everyone. He sold for people he shouldn't necessarily sell for.
Of course, the best example of that, and it never gets old, is Rock taking a stunner.
Oh my goodness!
He does the backflip. It's beautiful.
It's true, but you believe that one will knock him out of the ring, and it's hilarious because we've given shame to Shawn Michaels for doing the exact same thing. But with
SummerSlam, yes, against Hogan, yeah.
But with The Rock, the thing was he would play ball. Even though I don't want to say he didn't believe it wasn't about him. I think he knew it was about him. But he understood that the best way to make money is to have somebody who you believe could kick his ass, because people would want to see it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he as much as he could give a beating, he could also take a beating.
Yeah.
And it always made it look good, yeah.
Whereas if you compared to, a Goldberg, or to a lesser extent in Austin, they didn't necessarily give or do the honors for newer people, because they, rather than believe it would raise those people's stock, they acted as though it would harm their own. So that's why we didn't get Austin and Jarrett or Austin and Mero, which could have done some good business and made some... Jarrett especially, I believe that would have made some great money in 97. But Austin was not going to sell or work with Jeff Jarrett because he thought it would bring down his value in doing so. Yeah. Whereas The Rock was like, no, Shane Helms, let's do this, my friend. I'll start working on lyrics.
You bring up a great point. I think, some of the all-time greats in the business of professional wrestling are givers. Mm-hmm. Because they see it helps them, it helps my opponent, it helps the business.
That's where you see, a Jericho, a Kurt Angle...
Yeah.
A Cena. And I know, I joke, even I do the lol Cena wins joke. But, he did make Sheamus as a believable threat. He did sell for these people. Unfortunately, not for all the ones he should have, because I believe he should have given more to Wade Barrett, for example. But Edge and RVD and Orton especially, and Del Rio and Punk, and especially in the second half of Cena's career, Cena had a much longer career than The Rock did. But even though Cena won, it was never a squash.
But yes, The Rock has always been very generous in that regard. But he's always, he may have got an L in the column there, but he's always come out as a winner in the end.
I feel like there's parallels to his acting career in that, because he would sell for everybody, and then he learns, you know what, maybe I should be a little bit more selective. He never turned that into reason not to work with someone. But just like in the films where he took every single project, he was in Star Trek Voyager. He took everything he could, and it wasn't paying off. But then, once he did have a couple good titles on his belt, it became a thing where if you can get The Rock, it's going to be a success. With Wrestling World, it was the same thing. Because, him working WrestleMania with the Sultan didn't do it.
Well, I even think of the trilogy with Austin at Mania.
Oh yeah.
And okay, maybe WrestleMania 15, it was Austin's time to win. But him agreeing to have Austin go over at 17, I think that was he could have demanded to go over.
I feel like that one, the right result, but the wrong execution in 17, because they were in Texas. They didn't.
Yeah, but Austin, he really wanted to be heel.
Yeah,
that was his insistence.
Austin, even his hindsight, he knows he should have stunned McMahon afterwards. But 15, I feel went the right way, because it's not often remembered. That was a very heel-centric show. And just like WrestleMania 30 is remembered for two things, it's remembered for Daniel Bryan and the greatest, happy ending in the history of the business. It's also remembered for The Undertaker's streak ending. Me completely striking out with the woman from Pennsylvania in the seat ahead of me, and we could hear the air conditioning in the Superdome, brother, because the whole building went quiet.
And no, it was the Silverdome.
The Silverdome, dude. But WrestleMania 15, there was that, and what people are forgetting, the other major story was Chyna and Triple H reuniting. And it was supposed to be a happy ending because she had come back home to DX, and then Triple H turned on the group. So they lost Chyna and Triple H, which completely sucked the energy out of the room until that main event where they got their happy ending back.
Yeah, but so I just to go back to the point of The Rock giving, he loses 2 out of 3, and yet, you would think that Austin beating Rock twice, that should be the end of The Rock, and yet why was it still such an attraction at Mania 19? It didn't matter that he lost those 2 matches, right? Yeah. He was still people still want to see them fight again.
Yeah. It was a beautiful time.
Even if he lost at Mania 19, I would think that there would still be enough steam to go a 4th one.
If Austin's neck could have held up, they probably could have. But 2004 especially, they realized they had to move on to the new guard.
Yeah. And that was Austin's last match, without it being announced. Mm-hmm. With the exception of what happened at this year's Mania 38, but whatever. That wasn't really a match.
His match with Owens was good.
Yeah. But let's consider 19 as the last match, right? What can we say about The Rock? And to sum it up, he's a very special wrestler, right? And I don't think, yes, we've seen great and popular stars, but nobody quite like him in the ring and outside of it. And it's his 50th birthday. It seems unreal to me. To me, he's always that young, cocky guy. And to think that he's 50, that's... does it make me feel old? Well, I guess.
Sure makes me feel old.
You know what? I just had this thought today that, there is a generation of people who actually don't know him as a wrestler.
That's right.
You know, I mean, okay, 20-year-olds, I can't believe this. My God, they're born in 2002.
Doesn't that break your heart?
Well, basically, they do. Yeah, it does. Oh my God, they really don't know him as a wrestler.
Yeah.
They don't have. They wouldn't have. How could they? How could they have?
Yeah, there are some other wrestling YouTubers that I've chatted with, and it's like, oh yeah, when did you start watching? When did you become a fan? 2012. Like, are you kidding me? You weren't even around when he had his comeback run. You were just completely gone. You know, it's like it does make a person feel old. That's for sure. Like I was 10 when he debuted. I was 10 when he was Intercontinental Champion.
I was a few years behind you. I was about 6, but you know, I followed him throughout all the rest of it. It's also just odd to me that there's a lot of people who actually, when they see him, will actually say, "Oh, that's Dwayne Johnson."
That's the Tooth Fairy.
In the early part of his career,
I will not let that go. If there's anybody in the comments, I will not let that go. He was the Tooth Fairy.
When he started his film career, he was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Mm-hmm. And that was because of rights issues.
Right. Well, and now, you know, that The Rock has sort of... The Rock in the marquee has disappeared and is Dwayne Johnson. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think, there's so many people now that will see him and, that's Dwayne Johnson. You know, but for me, it's always going to be The Rock.
Yeah. And I still refer to him as Rocky Maivia.
But that's even older, my God.
I know. So it's a situation where it's like the anti-smart. I've talked to some people that still refer to Seth Rollins as Tyler Black because they want to be hipsters. But I do the opposite. I'll call him by his kayfabe name.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
But so you know, he's a really special. He's a really special figure. I think, you know, the main point I think that we both had touched on is even if we didn't like him as, you know, what he was doing or, you know, his character and stuff, you couldn't not respect him. Mm-hmm. He has earned every bit of praise. And I really appreciate the fact that he does not come off as an arrogant bastard.
Which is completely the opposite of what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Because if anybody out there you think
because
is going to be that rude,
The Rock
bastard.
is an arrogant bastard,
yeah.
Right? The Rock, the character, and he isn't. And the fact, I don't know how he can so convincingly play an asshole and not be that way. It's really, really special.
Just remember, kids, there was a time when The Rock would be mean to Michael Cole, and people didn't like it. Now people are begging for someone to be mean to Michael Cole.
Yeah.
Kevin Kelly, though, still uncalled for. He should have been nicer to Kevin Kelly. I stand by that.
Kevin Kelly, yeah. You remember Mark Lloyd? Mark Lloyd. Who the hell is Mark Lloyd? Or one of the very, very, very best. It was the lead up to Hell in a Cell, Armageddon, and he mocks all of his opponents.
Oh yeah.
I'm Kurt Angle. I'm gonna get some milk, and he's gonna get in the ring with the game.
To me, it's still when he took a picture with the NWO on their debut night at No Way Out.
Right.
And you know, it's like at first he took the pictures, and then because they tried to make a peace offering with Stone Cold, he didn't appreciate it. They gave him beer, he told him to F off.
Yeah.
The Rock, Hogan said, "Yeah, my son's a fan, so you know if Nick likes him, then something's wrong." But he takes a photo with Hogan. And I think it was Nash who goes, "Well, no account for that kid's taste." And The Rock just turned on him. And he's like, you know what? Yeah. I was giving you the benefit of the doubt here. And then he tore them to shreds. Of course, Botchamania utilized him teasing Diesel. I've used that clip. I used that clip on the Braun Strowman needs to quit Twitter. Yeah. That Braun Strowman needs to quit Twitter video, I used that clip in it.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, and you take that camera, Chico, and give it to Hogan. Razor Ramon. God bless him.
Rest in peace, Razor.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one, too. There's so many little moments like that.
Mm-hmm. And that was the thing. Yeah. And you mentioned it earlier, that one where, you know, Hurricane was behind The Rock's couch. how do I put this? The problem with wrestling today, besides Raw being too damn long, is that nothing before the main event matters. And throughout those shows, those little backstage segments, little mid-card matches, the little throwaways had some value. You know, they did give you reason to tune in between the first 25-minute promo and the last 10 minutes of the main event.
Yeah.
And The Rock was really good because you would get him, 4 or 5 times throughout the show. That's something AEW needs to figure their stuff out, because they'll put their main eventers in the beginning and then they never appear again, which means people have seen who they want to see and then they can tune out.
Anyway, to sum things up, The Rock is a very, very unique and special figure in the history of professional wrestling, and the transition from wrestling to Hollywood, certainly the most successful wrestler turned actor that we've seen. Can others do it? Possibly. I mean, we mentioned some other stars that have followed, fairly well in his footsteps, but he has carved a very unique spot for himself in the history of the sport of pro wrestling and Hollywood. So, for 50th birthday, happy birthday, Rocky. Remember, was it Mankind did the This Is Your Life? Was it for his birthday?
It was for his birthday.
Yeah, that was great.
I mean, that segment was awful. It had no rights being good at all, and it was still one of the highest rated segments in the history, save for a Pat Patterson-Gerald Briscoe match.
And it's because, the Rock and South connection was such a fun thing.
Yeah. If there's a lesson for anybody to take from The Rock here, and again, this falls back into that second half of De Niro's career, The Rock didn't stop when he failed. When Rocky Maivia, the smiling babyface, flopped, he tried something new. He went third person. He healed on him. Got so insanely popular. When his first few movies were flops, didn't give up. He kept trying to take projects, and then when he figured out what the right ones were going to be for him, he ended up blowing up. When he made his $7 entertainment and started doing different apps like the Rock Clock, it sucked, but now he owns the XFL because he didn't, pull the plug and go, okay, well, this whole thing is just a failure. He is the personification of persistence. And that, I think, people will always be that pessimist, and they'll go, well, yeah, I mean, they were famous, they're on TV, of course they're going to be successful. This guy should have failed 3 times over. And rather than just fade away like a Kenzo Suzuki or a Rene Dupree, he tried again. And eventually it did take. Even Hulk Hogan gave up on movies because he had, 4 stinkers in a row.
Yeah, but maybe if he would have persisted, he could have had that breakthrough. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about, perseverance. I think that's a great point. Because The Rock has had his share of poor scripts, to say the least. But he's endured. He's gone on. He's continued. And, he's always, like we said, whether you love him or hate him, he commands attention, and he deserves, his laurels, if you will.
Agreed.
Right on.
I think that's probably the way to leave it. Yeah, I think that's all we can do.
Right
Just,
on. So
happy birthday, Dwayne. Have yourself a nice slice of pie. Not that kind.
That's right. Right on. Well, thank you so much, Jim. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, for being with me here to chat about this. Jesus. So I'm trying to think. It's like, what can we do to plug? There's still the Before the Cyborgs site, but I know it's currently inactive.
Yes. Well, you can just follow me on Twitter, and I'm at Maestro Michael 2. And yeah.
And there you have it. Of course, I want to thank Michael once again for sitting down and offering his take on what makes The Rock so popular and successful to all the millions and millions of The Rock's fans. And I do want to pose a couple questions to you as well. What made you a fan of The Rock? Were you watching when he was at his wrestling peak? Or was it a film or TV show later on that made you familiar with the Great One? And tell me your favorite and least favorite Rock projects in the comments, because I want you to be a part of this conversation too. For now though, I better get my shoulders off the mat, so thank you for tuning in to Jobbed Out. I'll catch you next time.